Not all nights are the same. Some carry an invisible weight, as if destiny is on the verge of changing irreversibly. On that cold night, Officer André had no idea, but he was about to experience something that would change his life forever. Amidst the chaos of the dark streets and the biting wind, he would respond to a call that would lead him to a shocking discovery. A small child, abandoned in the trash, left behind by a world that so often turns its back on the most vulnerable. But what would drive someone to abandon such a fragile life? What André found in that dumpster was much more than a newborn fighting for survival. It was the beginning of a journey of redemption, pain, and hope. This story goes beyond the duty of a police officer. It is a journey of healing and transformation, where unexpected love can be born in the darkest moments, and where the humanity of a man hardened by life will reveal itself in ways he could never have imagined. Get ready to follow a story that challenges the limits of survival and love. When life places the fragility of a child in the hands of a broken man, everything we believe about loss, overcoming, and faith will be questioned. With each page, you'll be taken to the edge of emotions, exploring how far love, pain, and hope can take us. What will happen when André's fate intertwines with that of the little child? Are you ready to find out? At the end of this story, we have a revelation to make, but first, grab a tissue, you're going to need it.
The night was cold, and I, André, was patrolling the streets of my neighborhood. The biting wind seemed to whisper secrets of despair and loneliness. I was used to the darkness that enveloped those streets, but that night, something in the air felt different. The dim streetlights flickered, almost as if they were trying to warn me about something I couldn't yet comprehend. I had seen a lot during my years as a police officer, but that night carried a weight that seemed to settle heavily on my shoulders. The radio crackled, breaking the oppressive silence. Unit 17, emergency call on Rua das Flores. Possible abandonment situation. Dispatcher's voice sounded distant, as if speaking from another world. I opened the car door and let the cold air in, feeling a shiver run down my spine. Rua das Flores was notorious for being one of the neighborhood's most problematic areas, and calls like this never brought good news. When I arrived at the scene, it felt like stepping into a nightmare. The stench of garbage and decay filled my nostrils, and the shadows danced around, as if they wanted to swallow me whole. The trash bins were overflowing, and the dim lighting did little to reveal what was truly happening. I hesitated, my heart racing in my chest. What would I find here? What could have driven someone to abandon a child? Come on, André, I muttered to myself. This isn't the first time you've dealt with this. I took a deep breath, trying to push aside the fear creeping in. I began to sift through the trash, trying to ignore the rustling sounds and the biting cold that pierced my skin. Every movement felt like a challenge. It was as if the night itself was testing me, daring to see how far I would go. That's when I heard it, a muffled cry that cut through the silence like a knife. My heart stopped for a moment. I moved closer, following the sound. The trash bin in front of me was slightly ajar, and as I leaned in, what I saw was fragility I had never imagined. A newborn, wrapped in a filthy blanket, was lying there, crying out as if pleading for help. That small, defenseless being made me feel a wave of protection I didn't know still existed within me. My God, I whispered, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. How could someone do this? I couldn't hold back my emotions. Carefully, I picked the baby girl up, cradling her gently. She was so small, so vulnerable. Her cries began to soften as I wrapped her in my jacket, trying to warm her. In that moment, the coldness of the night seemed to fade, and I felt an urgent need growing inside me. You're going to be okay, little one, I said softly, looking at her tiny face. Her eyes were closed, her face wrinkled, but there was life there, hope. I'll take you somewhere safe. I knew I had to get her to the hospital. The streets were no place for a child, and I couldn't leave her there, alone, amidst the discarded remnants of a society that too often ignored its suffering. I climbed into the patrol car, holding the baby securely but with all the care in the world. The engine roared to life as I drove, and every bump in the road felt like a reminder of the harshness of life on the streets. I glanced in the rearview mirror and, for a moment, saw myself reflected in the image, a police officer, a man who was supposed to be strong, yet now felt vulnerable in the face of this child's fragility. What I was about to face went far beyond any criminal investigation. "Why were you left behind?" I asked, knowing there would be no answer. "What happened to your mother?" The silence inside the car was deafening, but at the same time, it was comforting. I needed time to process everything that was happening. Life on the streets had always been chaotic, but now there was something deeper at play. A life was in my hands, and I couldn't afford to fail. When I arrived at the hospital, I was greeted by the medical team, who quickly mobilized to help. A nurse approached me, her face etched with concern. "What happened?" she asked as I handed the baby over to her. "She was found abandoned. She needs urgent care," I replied, my voice trembling. As the team rushed into action, I felt a slight weight lift off my shoulders, but the anguish still lingered. What could have driven someone to do this? How could pain and despair lead a mother to abandon her own child? I stood there, watching as the doctors worked, overwhelmed and confused. I knew I needed to understand the situation, not just for the child, but for myself as well. What could I do to help? How could I change this reality? Life on the streets wasn't just a statistic, it was a story of people, of pain and struggle. And now, that little girl was part of my story. The connection I felt with her was undeniable. The fragility of life in front of me made me reconsider everything I believed about my job and what it meant to protect society. These weren't just statistics. They were lives, stories that needed to be told. And I was determined to uncover the truth behind this child's abandonment, even if it meant confronting my own humanity. The smell of disinfectant and the harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital were overwhelming, almost blinding. I stood in the hallway, my sweaty hands gripping a cup of water I didn't have the nerve to drink. The sound of monitors beeping and the hurried voices of doctors created a symphony of urgency that echoed in my chest. My thoughts were a whirlwind, but one thing was clear: I couldn't stop thinking about the baby's fragility. How could someone leave her there, amidst the debris? The image of her, so tiny and defenseless, was burned into my mind. "Officer André?" A soft female voice pulled me from my thoughts. It was Karen, the social worker who had been called to assist. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held genuine concern. "Yes, that's me," I replied, trying to keep my composure. "How is she?" "The doctors are doing everything they can. She's in critical condition, but there's still hope." Karen glanced at the floor for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. "If you'd like, you can go in and see her." "I'm not family." "I'm not sure if I should." I hesitated. The thought of going into that room and seeing the baby left me feeling anxious. But at the same time, I wanted to be close to her, to feel like, somehow, I could make a difference. "If you feel that way, maybe it means you care. And that's important." Karen's voice was gentle but firm. "Sometimes, just being there is all a child needs." I took a deep breath and nodded. I entered the room, and what I saw completely disarmed me. The tiny baby was surrounded by tubes and monitors, yet she had an indescribable beauty. Her skin was delicate, and the small movements she made seemed so fragile, as if she might disappear at any moment. "Hey, little one," I whispered, stepping closer to her crib. "You're strong, aren't you?" I stood there, looking at her, feeling a lump form in my throat. The emotion was overwhelming. How could someone abandon such a precious life? It's a sad case, isn't it? Karen's voice broke through my thoughts. I wasn't sure if she was talking about the baby or the situation as a whole. Sad doesn't even begin to describe it, I replied, unable to take my eyes off the child. How could someone do this? How could someone leave a baby like this? Karen sighed. Unfortunately, it's not uncommon. Often, people who abandon children do so out of desperation. It's a series of circumstances that pile up until there seems to be no way out. The system fails, people fail, and in the end, it's the child who suffers. I'm a police officer, Karen. I should be able to do something about it. To protect these children. The frustration spilled over into my voice, and I felt powerless. Protecting is more than just arresting criminals, André. Sometimes, it's about understanding the situations that lead to crime. Often, what we need is empathy. She looked me in the eyes, and I could see her genuine passion for the work she did. You're here now. That's already a step. But what can I do? I asked, searching for an answer that would give me some peace of mind. We can investigate what really happened. Find out who her mother is, understand the reasons that led her to this act. You can help change this story. The determination in Karen's voice was contagious. How? I asked, intrigued. I can help you connect the dots. There are shelters, community centers, people who can give us clues. We can't let this girl become just another statistic. You're right. Let's do it. The decision came out of me like a lit flame. I couldn't stand by while a life hung in the balance. Great. Where should we start? Do you have any idea where we might find the mother? Karen's eyes sparkled with energy that inspired me. Maybe we can start at the local shelters. A mother in need might have passed through one of them. It's where many vulnerable women end up seeking refuge. Perfect. Let's go. She smiled, and I realized that, somehow, this partnership was forming. A connection I hadn't noticed until now. As we walked through the hospital, the reality of the situation hit me again. The fragility of life, the constant struggle of so many people around us. I had always believed that order and the law were the only ways to protect society, but now I found myself completely immersed in a world where compassion and empathy were the true keys to change. When we arrived at the shelter, the atmosphere felt different. The place was simple, but there was a sense of hope in the air. The walls were decorated with children's drawings and inspiring quotes, a stark contrast to the harshness of the outside world. Hi, we're here to ask a few questions, I said to the receptionist, trying to project a confidence I didn't really feel inside. Sure, what's this about? She looked at us with curiosity. We're looking for a mother who may have recently abandoned her child. We need to know if anyone fitting that description has passed through here, Karen intervened, her voice steady and clear. The receptionist frowned. Unfortunately, that's not uncommon. Many mothers come seeking help, and sometimes they feel pressured to make drastic decisions. What can you tell me about this mother? Karen and I exchanged a meaningful look. It was the first time I'd spoken so openly about the situation. She left her baby in a trash bin. We're trying to understand how it came to this. The receptionist's expression shifted. That's horrible. If you'd like, I can check to see if there have been any recent reports of a mother in that kind of situation. We occasionally get mothers with very difficult stories. Please, any information that could help would be appreciated, I said, my heart racing. After a few minutes, the receptionist returned with a paper in hand. We found a record of a young woman named Maya. She was here a few weeks ago, but we haven't heard from her since. Can you give us more information? Where can we find her? The anxiety began to creep into my voice. She was staying in a temporary shelter, but the last we heard, she had left. We don't know where she went. Karen looked at me, her determination contagious. We need to find her. If she was able to leave her daughter behind, there may be a much deeper reason behind it. Let's go after her, I affirmed, the sense of urgency overtaking me. This mission was no longer just about the baby, but about understanding the cycle of pain that led a mother to make such a drastic decision. I didn't know what we would find, but something inside me told me this journey was only beginning. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The city's lights flickered in the distance as I drove through the dark streets, my mind still reeling from the scene I had witnessed at the hospital. The newborn's cries echoed in my head, a sound that seemed to blend with the constant hum of traffic and the murmurs of passing voices. The fragility of that new life left me restless, and more than ever, I felt the need to understand what had driven someone to abandon her. With Karen by my side, the situation was becoming more complex, and I knew we had a long road ahead. Have you ever thought about what might have happened to her mother? Why someone would do this? I asked, trying to open the conversation as we headed toward a well-known shelter. Karen looked out the window, watching the flickering lights and the shadows moving along the sidewalks. It's not uncommon, André. Many women find themselves in desperate situations, with no support, no resources. Abandonment isn't just an action, it's a reflection of a life marked by hardship. But that doesn't justify it. A mother should fight, should find a way to stay with her child, I replied, feeling the weight of indignation. How can someone just give up? Sometimes, it's not about giving up. It's about survival. They face a system that often doesn't support them. What you saw at the hospital is just the tip of the iceberg, Karen said softly. We need to understand her story, not just her actions. Those words resonated with me, and my resolve strengthened. We needed to find the baby's mother, and somehow, help her. When we arrived at the shelter, the atmosphere was different from what I had expected. It wasn't just a place of refuge, it was a space of hope, filled with people who, like the baby's mother, were fighting their own battles. Let's start here. There are records of women who have gone through similar situations, Karen suggested as we entered the building. The air was thick with stories, and I felt that every step we took brought us closer to the truth. As we walked through the corridors, we came upon a room where some women were sitting, talking quietly. Karen introduced herself and began speaking with them, trying to discover if anyone knew the baby's mother. Meanwhile, I stepped aside, observing the interaction and thinking about the pain these women must carry. Would you mind answering a few questions? I asked a young woman who seemed more reserved but had a steady gaze. She hesitated, but then nodded. I'm trying to find a mother who abandoned her child. Have you heard anything about that? I asked, hopeful. Yes, I've heard stories. Many times, the mothers don't have a choice. One of them, Maya, was here a while ago. She was pregnant, and after the baby was born, her situation got worse. I'm not sure what happened after that, the young woman answered, her voice low. Maya, I repeated, committing the name to memory. Do you know where I can find her now? I'm not sure, but I heard she was kicked out of her home. She was staying in a shelter, but I don't know if she's still there, the young woman said, looking down. Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't imagine the pain Maya must have felt, being kicked out, without support. What had led her to this situation? What made her believe that abandoning her daughter was the only option? "Thank you for your help," I said, feeling a mixture of gratitude and sadness. "We'll try to find her." We left the shelter with a renewed sense of purpose. Now, we had a name and a direction. We need to head to that shelter. We might still be able to find her there, Karen said as we got back into the car. "Yes, let's go. I can't let this story end like this. I need to understand what happened to her," I replied, the urgency building within me. The drive to the shelter was quiet, but each of us was lost in our own thoughts. The streets were familiar, but tonight, everything felt different, heavier. I was about to step into unknown territory, a place where pain and struggle would become tangible. When we arrived at the shelter, a wave of anxiety washed over me. The building was simple, but there was a certain energy emanating from it. It was a place of refuge, but also a place of hope. As we entered, we were greeted by a social worker who seemed well-versed in handling people in difficult situations. "Hi, good evening. What can I help you with?" he asked, offering a gentle smile. "We're looking for a young woman named Maya." "She was here recently," Karen said calmly. "Ah, yes. Maya. She was with us, but left a few days ago. She was very distressed after the baby was born. I couldn't figure out where she went," the social worker explained, his expression shifting to one of concern. "Do you know what happened? Why did she leave?" I asked, needing to understand more. She felt overwhelmed. The pressure from family, society, it all took a toll on her. Unfortunately, some people don't get the support they need. Maya was fighting so many battles, and in a moment of desperation, she decided she had to go, the social worker said with a saddened look. "And do you know where we might find her now?" Karen asked, hopeful. "I'm not sure, but she might have gone somewhere she feels safe. There are a few community shelters nearby. Or she may have returned to her family's house," he replied. "We need to try. Let's check all the possible places," I said, determined. As we left the shelter, I felt a growing connection to Maya. I needed to find this young woman, understand her pain, and somehow help her. It wasn't just a job anymore, it had become a personal mission. The night grew darker, and the streetlights flickered as we drove. Karen and I exchanged glances, and I realized we were in this together, united by the desire to change the life of someone who, like the baby, deserved a chance. Maya's story was intertwining with mine, and I knew nothing would be the same after this. As we drove through the streets, a new sense of purpose welled up inside me. I wasn't just a police officer anymore, I was someone who cared. And when we found Maya, I was determined to do whatever it took to help her rewrite her story. The shelter's room had a familiar, sterile smell of disinfectant mixed with the coldness of concrete. The gray walls seemed to close in with uncertainty, and the residents looked on with wary eyes, a mixture of distrust, hope, and above all, fear. I wasn't sure how Maya would react to our presence, but deep down, I felt that what I was about to do was necessary. Karen gave me an encouraging look. We both knew this visit could be pivotal, not just for the baby, but for all of us. We approached the receptionist, a middle-aged woman with a tired expression. She directed us to a room where Maya was staying. My heart pounded in my chest, and a knot formed in my throat. Each step felt like we were walking toward the unknown. When we entered, I saw Maya sitting in the corner, her eyes glued to the floor, as if the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. Her disheveled hair and distant expression revealed a young woman who had endured far more than anyone should. Karen and I exchanged glances, and she began to speak gently. "Maya? Karen said softly, her voice like a bridge between us. We're here to help. Can you tell us what happened? Maya slowly lifted her gaze, and I could feel the tension in the air. At first, she hesitated, as if battling the memories that haunted her. I don't know if I can talk about it, she whispered. It's all so hard. Empathy filled me. Maya, we understand you're going through a difficult time. But we're here to listen, not to judge. You can trust us, I said, trying to convey the sincerity I felt. She looked at us, and for a moment, I saw a spark of hope in her eyes. I just wanted things to be different, she began, her voice trembling. I didn't want my daughter to go through this. I have no family, no one to help me. When I found out I was pregnant, everything fell apart. My boyfriend left me, and I didn't know what to do. A heavy silence fell over the room as Maya spoke. I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. When my mom found out, she kicked me out. She said I had brought shame to the family. I had nowhere to go, she continued, and the pain in her voice was raw. I didn't want to leave her, but what choice did I have? I was alone, without support. I couldn't take care of her. I thought maybe, if I left her, she'd have a better chance, she said, her face contorted in pain. Those words hit me like a punch. The fragility of her situation sent a whirlwind of emotions through me. I couldn't believe how cruel the world had been to a young woman already facing so much. Maya, you're not alone now. We're here to help. And your daughter, she deserves a chance, I said, almost pleading for her to believe me. But what if she doesn't want me? What if I can't be a good mother? Maya responded, fear lacing her voice. You're already being a good mother by caring enough to want what's best for her, even though it hurt you, Karen interjected, her expression filled with compassion. Life is full of challenges, but you have the opportunity to rewrite your story. Maya took a deep breath, and I saw the internal struggle playing out within her. I don't know if I can do it. Things are so complicated, and I feel so weak, she said, shaking her head as if to push the idea away. We all face hardships, Maya. What's important is taking that first step. And you're already doing that by talking to us, I said, hoping my words could somehow ease her pain. She looked at us, and I noticed a slight shift in her expression. What if I fail? What if I mess up again? If you fail, we'll be here to support you. No one expects you to be perfect. What matters is your willingness to fight for a new chance, Karen replied, her determination infectious. Maya fell silent for a moment, seemingly reflecting on everything we had said. I just want her to have a better life than mine, she said, her voice choked with emotion. And you can do this. We'll help you find the resources you need. You don't have to go through this alone, I said, feeling a connection forming. I just don't know where to start, Maya admitted, and I saw a small thread of hope weaving its way into her heart. We'll start with what you truly want. Do you want to meet your daughter again? I asked, realizing that this could be the key to unlocking the door to reconciliation. Maya hesitated, but soon her expression brightened. I don't know if she'll want me. I left her. I'm a terrible mother, she said, but there was a glimmer of determination in her eyes. No one is perfect, Maya. The love you feel for your daughter is what really matters. Let's take this step together. Do you feel ready for that? Karen asked, as she held Maya's hand. She looked deeply into Karen's eyes, and I could see that something inside her had changed. I want to try. I want to be a mother. I just need help, she replied, her voice firmer now. We're here for that. Together, we'll find a way, I said, and for the first time, I felt like there was a light at the end of the tunnel for all of us. Maya smiled, and I saw hope reignite in her eyes. The transformation had begun, and even though the journey ahead was long and filled with challenges, we were ready to face it together. Her story would not end in despair, but with a new chance for a fresh start. Thus, the cold shelter room became a small space of human warmth, where empathy and solidarity intertwined, showing that sometimes, the greatest challenges can be overcome when you have support. And I, André, a police officer who always believed in protecting others, was now learning the importance of caring and nurturing, not just with my work, but with my heart. The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains of the small shelter, and I found myself waking up with a strange sense of hope. The month had been intense, full of ups and downs, but there was something about Maya that was beginning to change. I felt like a part of that transformation, as if, somehow, her journey was also mine. The road to recovery wasn't easy, but there were small victories that brightened our days. That morning, I decided it was time to encourage Maya to take an important step, meeting her daughter. I sat at the table, the smell of fresh coffee filling the air, and waited for her to show up. When Maya entered, her gaze was more confident than in the previous weeks. I watched her, thinking about how much she had changed since I first met her. Her eyes, once filled with fear, now reflected a soft determination. "Good morning, Maya," I said, smiling. "Good morning, André," she replied, with a slight smile as well. "What's on the agenda for today?" "I was thinking, maybe you should consider visiting your daughter. I know it might seem scary, but she needs you." "And you need her," I said, trying to convey all the sincerity I felt. Maya hesitated, her gaze fixed on a point on the floor. "What if she doesn't want me? What if I'm not capable of being the mother she needs?" Her voice trembled, and I could sense the internal struggle she was facing. "Maya, you're fighting to become a better person every day. That's already a huge step. Your daughter needs to know that you care about her, that you're trying. And I'll be there with you. You don't have to do this alone," I said, trying to be a pillar of support. She took a deep breath, and I saw a spark of courage light up in her eyes. "Do you really think I can do this?" "Yes, I truly believe it," I responded, feeling my heart race. "You've already taken so many important steps. This is just one more." After a moment of silence, Maya slowly nodded. "Okay, André. I'll do it. I'll meet my daughter." That day would be a milestone in our journey. We arranged to meet later at the hospital where the girl was being cared for. As I waited, my mind was filled with thoughts about what could happen. I wanted the reunion between the two to be magical, but I knew reality could be more complicated. When we finally arrived at the hospital, the atmosphere was heavy with emotion. Maya seemed nervous, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her bag strap. "I don't know what to say to her," she murmured. "Just be yourself, Maya. Talk to her as if you were talking to me. She might not understand the words, but she will feel your love," I said, trying to calm her. We entered the room, and the smell of disinfectant was predominant. The little one was there, wrapped in blankets, with a monitor softly beeping in the background. Seeing her, Maya's heart seemed to race. The fragility of that newborn life caused her eyes to fill with tears. "Hi, my little one," Maya whispered, approaching the incubator. I took a step back, respecting that intimate and profound moment. The baby moved slightly, as if sensing her mother's presence. The silence in the room was almost tangible, filled with unspoken emotions. "I'm sorry I left you," Maya murmured, her voice cracking. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't help myself, so I stepped closer and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "She's still yours, Maya. And you're here now. That's what matters." Maya looked at me, and in that moment, I saw a new light in her eyes. It was a mixture of love, pain, regret, and hope. She turned back to the baby. "I'm going to fight for you. I'll do whatever it takes to bring you home." Those words echoed through the room, and I knew something had changed inside her. The connection they shared, even with the distance that separated them, was powerful. I stood there, watching, as Maya touched her daughter's hand. The look of love she seemed to convey was something I'd never seen before. After a few minutes, Maya stepped back slightly, still keeping her hand on the incubator. "What do you think she's thinking? Do you think she knows I'm her mother?" she asked with a shy smile. "I think she does. Love transcends words, Maya. And you're here now, that's what matters," I responded, hoping those words could bring her comfort. Time passed, and after several visits to the hospital, the bond between mother and daughter began to grow stronger. Maya became more animated, excited for each small milestone her baby reached. We often talked about the little victories, like when the baby first opened her eyes and looked at us. Every moment was a new achievement. A month had passed since Maya started attending therapy sessions. She had managed to get a temporary job at a local bakery, and I couldn't help but feel proud of her. The determination she displayed was inspiring. That day, we decided it was time to celebrate her accomplishments. "Let's do something special for you," I suggested as we sat down in a cafe near the shelter. "How about a picnic in the park? You deserve a day of fun." Maya's eyes lit up. "That sounds wonderful, André. It's been so long since I've done something like that." So, we packed a small picnic with fruit and sandwiches and headed to the park. The sun was shining, and the cool breeze made it a perfect day. When we arrived, we found a quiet spot under a large, shady tree. As we sat and enjoyed the food, we talked about our dreams, fears, and hopes. Maya spoke about how she wanted to become a social worker one day, to help other mothers in tough situations. I listened, admiring her strength. "You can absolutely do that, Maya. You have an incredible story, and you can inspire others," I said, encouraging her. "And what about you, André? What do you want?" Her question caught me off guard. It was rare for someone to ask what I wanted. Well, I've always wanted to make a difference. Sometimes I feel like I'm just following orders, but with you and your daughter, I feel like I can really impact someone's life," I admitted, feeling a wave of vulnerability. She smiled sincerely. "You already are, André. You helped me find hope again. I'll never forget that." That moment was powerful. The sun was slowly setting, and the golden light bathed the scene, making everything feel more magical. It was a reminder that, despite the struggles, we could find beauty and connection amid the chaos. But, as always in life, peace was about to be interrupted. As we sat there enjoying the moment, my phone started vibrating in my pocket. The sound was insistent, and I knew something was wrong. "Sorry, I have to take this," I said, standing up to step away. As I walked off, I felt a sense of urgency in the air. The call was from a colleague, and the words he spoke sent a chill down my spine. "We need you, André. It's an emergency." Those words echoed in my mind as I looked back at Maya. Her smile faded as she realized I had to leave. The urgency in my colleague's voice left no room for doubt. "I have to go, Maya," I said, my heart heavy. "But I promise I'll be back. I'll be by your side." She nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "Be careful, André. Don't forget you need to take care of yourself too." "I will. And you, too, okay? Take care of your daughter." "I'll be back soon," I replied, giving her an encouraging smile before stepping away, already feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on my shoulders. The day that had begun with hope was about to turn into something much more complicated. I didn't know what awaited me, but the determination to help Maya and her daughter still burned inside me. I would come back, no matter the cost. The air was thick and tense when I arrived at the alley. The sound of gunfire echoed, and my heart raced. Instinctively, I drew my weapon, but at the same time, part of me wanted to run in the opposite direction. I knew this wasn't the time for hesitation. What I saw ahead was a scene of absolute chaos, armed men, desperate screams, and the sharp smell of gunpowder in the air. My 13 years on the force hadn't prepared me for a moment like this. Adrenaline surged through me, and for a brief moment, all I could think about was protecting the innocent. "Police! Get down!" I shouted, trying to make the people in the alley follow my instructions. But the confusion was so overwhelming that my voice seemed lost amidst the violence. I could hear the gunshots getting closer, and in the blink of an eye, everything became a blur. In an instant, I felt an impact. The pain hit me like a wave, and I was thrown to the ground. The world around me grew distant, as if I was watching everything from outside my own body. My thoughts drifted to Maya and the little girl who had now become my responsibility. Maya's face appeared in my mind, her worried expression as we talked about her life and struggles. And the image of the baby, so small and vulnerable, made me want to fight. The desperation to protect those two lives gave me strength. "I can't let it end like this," I muttered to myself as I tried to crawl toward a safer spot. The ground was cold and hard, and every movement was a battle against the pain pulsing through my body. My vision began to blur, but I refused to give in. I remembered the first time I saw the baby in Karen's arms, how that moment had changed my perspective on everything. I wasn't just a cop, I was a protector, a potential father. Then, darkness took over. When I finally woke up, the smell of disinfectant and the sound of machines surrounded me. The hospital. A place where so many lives were saved, but where I had also seen so much suffering. I tried to move, but the pain in my chest made me stop. "André? You're awake." I heard a familiar voice, and soon saw Karen's face next to me. She looked visibly relieved, but her eyes still reflected worry. "What happened?" My voice came out hoarse and weak. "There was a shooting near the shelter. You were hit, but you're safe now. The situation is under control," she explained, but I needed to know more. "And Maya? And the baby?" "They're okay. They were at the shelter but managed to stay safe." Actually, it was Maya who had the presence of mind to help a child in danger. She acted quickly, André. Her courage was admirable, Karen said, and a wave of relief washed over me. The last thing I wanted was for something to happen to them. "I need to see them," I requested, trying to sit up. The pain intensified, but the urgency in my heart was stronger. Karen hesitated, but nodded. "Take it easy, you still need to recover." "But I'll speak to the doctor," she replied, quickly leaving the room. As she walked away, I allowed myself to reflect on what this meant. Maya had saved a life. She was strong, stronger than I could have ever imagined. And the baby, our connection, our bond that had formed so quickly, was safe. Karen returned with a doctor who quickly assessed me. "You're stable enough to receive visitors, but you still need to be monitored. Let's keep the visit short, okay?" "Great," I responded, impatient. As soon as the door closed, I could barely contain my anticipation. A few minutes later, the door opened again, and I saw Maya enter, hesitant. Her expression was a mix of relief and fear. "André," she exclaimed, rushing toward me before catching herself. "Are you okay?" "I am, thanks to you," I replied, trying to smile. "You were amazing, Maya. I knew you had courage, but what you did. I can't believe it." She looked down, embarrassed, and I could tell she was still carrying the weight of her past choices. I just did what I had to do. The child was in danger, and I couldn't let that happen, she said softly. You saved lives, Maya. You're a hero, I said, hoping she would see the magnitude of her actions. And our little girl? How is she? She's fine. I held her in my arms and took her to safety. She was scared, but then I thought of you and how you cared for her. That gave me strength, Maya said, and I felt warmth flood my heart. I want you to know that you're not alone. I'm here to help you and the baby. We can do this together, I offered, and I saw a new light in her eyes. Do you really want to do this? After everything that's happened? Maya asked, with a fragility that tore at my heart. Yes, I do. You and the baby are important to me now. I can't ignore that anymore, I affirmed, feeling a new sense of determination rising within me. What I had found amidst the chaos was more than just a job, it was a new purpose. And more than that, it was a chance to build a family. Maya's expression slowly changed. She still looked hesitant, but there was a spark of hope in her eyes. So, what do we do now? She asked, and the question echoed in me like an invitation. We take it one day at a time. And when you're ready, we can talk about adopting the baby. I want her to have a safe home, and I want you to be a part of that, I said, now speaking with more conviction. The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of the machines in the background. Maya smiled, and in that moment, everything felt possible. Together, we could create a new story, overcome the challenges, and find light even in the darkest nights. After all, we were more than survivors. We were a family in the making, and I was ready to fight for that.
What an intense story, right? Andre's journey with a little child makes us reflect on the choices we make, the challenges life throws at us, and the power of love in the midst of chaos. What's most impactful is knowing that this story isn't just a gripping piece of fiction but a reality that happened in Brazil in 2017. Sadly, situations like this are still part of our world, reminding us how fragile life is and how much it deserves to be protected and cherished. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow more content like this. Every subscription makes a difference and helps spread messages that touch hearts and make us reflect. And please, share your thoughts in the comments. We would love to hear how this story impacted you. Together, we can bring more stories of life, overcoming, and hope to light.